When I think toxic masculinity, I think about the unrealistic expectations set upon men by society, that they shouldn't express their emotions and they should just be tough through everything and they should, do everything by themselves. I think that that's like a toxic masculinity expectation. It's the expectations that are placed upon us that we didn't ask for, that are unhealthy, that are like detrimental to our health.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. I am your host, Todd Rennebaum. And what a wonderful episode we have for you again this week. I am very excited to introduce to you my friend Elise Michaels. She is a men's mental health coach, and she is a very, very smart lady. And she's helping many, many men and women too, I'm assuming, because when you help, it doesn't matter what gender you help, everyone around them is getting help too. So that's pretty amazing what she's doing. Before we get to that, I would like to talk about next week's episode, which is also fabulous, because I'm speaking to one of my most favorite people, because he created probably my favorite podcast. It's called This Is Actually Happening, and it is on Wondery, and I think you can get it on Prime, but his name is Wilt Missildine, and he's the host of the such show and producer and probably whatever else he does on there, I'm not sure, but anyway, he is amazing. His podcast is amazing. There's been a few people that have been on my podcast or on his podcast, and wouldn't you know it, there's going to be a few people that have been on this podcast that are going to be on his podcast in the coming weeks. So listen to those. I can't say enough about the guy. I just love him and I love his podcast. So anyway, that's next week. We've also got a new sponsor for the podcast, Federated Co-op. So that's exciting. Don't be sad. Don't be upset that there might be an ad now, because there's going to be some other cool stuff coming because of sponsors. So just sit back and enjoy the 30-second little ad, and the episode will continue on. So it's okay. And please don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Bunny Hugs Podcast. There's always discussions and questions and messages I'm getting from people, and that's always amazing. You can also find out a bit more about my guests on there, some memes, some inspirational words, some, an Instagram account. The podcast is also on Facebook at Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, and on TikTok at Bunny Hugs Podcast as well. So yeah, all you have to do is go onto those and hit follow, and it's just that easy. Please rate and review the podcast and share it with friends. There's some exciting stuff coming up in the future here for the podcast, and it's going to be really great. So make sure there's as many people as we can get to listen. Not for my ego. No, people are getting some healing from the podcast. They're realizing they're not alone, and they are being proactive in their own mental health, and they can relate to the guests and stuff. And it's just, as far as I'm concerned, the podcast is a mental health service. So please tell people about it. Okay, enough of the business stuff. Back to this week with Elise Michaels. She is amazing. You can follow her on all types of social medias. All her stuff will be in the show notes, so check those out. So without further ado, I give you Elise Michaels.
And I started because I was posting video content on LinkedIn, and men were the only ones reaching out to me for help. And I just realized that they didn't have a lot of support when it came to mental health. And I decided to be that voice. It's been the best decision of my life. That happened like 3 years ago. So,
I've seen a few females that talk a lot about men's mental health and stuff. And it is refreshing, because it is, I guess it's kind of like if you were in the LGBTQ community and there's allies, right? And it's like, oh, thank you. Other people get it, or at least they're supporting us. What are some of the, I guess, key differences you think between men's mental health and women's mental health?
Well, I think that the things that both men and women struggle with are the same, right? Men also struggle with depression and anxiety and, body dysmorphia and everything like that. But the main difference is women are allowed to talk about their depression and anxiety, and they have support in their friends and family, and men really don't. for men, it's kind of like, that's just what they see as life. Like life sucks, man up, toughen up, it'll make you a better man. And if they were to ever talk about it, they are called like a pussy or like you're not being a man, right? So it's like they just have to bear the burden, whereas women are like encouraged to talk about it with their friends. So men's struggles is just 10x because they have no one to share it with.
Do you think other men are their worst enemies because of that? They're like you said.
Sometimes men will perpetuate the destruction of their fellow man because there's some competition in there, right? There's some biological alpha need to like be the best, to be the toughest, to be the most alpha. But then when they're looking to someone for help, they don't know where to go because they don't trust women because they don't feel like they can be vulnerable around them. And then they feel like the other men are just going to call them a pussy or they're not like that. Like I get every man who I coach is kind of like, my friends aren't really like that. But if every man who I'm coaching says their friends aren't really like that, but they desire a deep, vulnerable connection, I said, maybe you should try to be the one who opens the door because they might be seeking a relationship just like you are.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the guys that do, call the other men that are seeking help, pussies or whatever, I think they are just they're the ones that are probably need the help more if they think that's being a pussy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but they're unconsciously unconscious, right? We all grow up with different backgrounds and we're used to different things. So that's their form of survival. Like that's what they see as best, they know as best, and they believe is best.
That must be frustrating. Is it frustrating for you to hear that all the time or to realize that men are going through that all the time? Not all men, right? I'm generalizing, of course, right?
Not necessarily, because I don't spend my time focusing on those people. I just spend my time focusing on the people who want to help and want change, because I know if we get enough people who are involved in the movement, it overshadows all of the negativity. Like if you waste all your time focusing on the negative, you'll give up and you'll just forget that there are so many people trying to change.
Do you find that different geological locations affects attitudes in men? And you know what I mean? Like, are some states or some cities worse for this kind of attitude?
Yeah, I don't have statistics on it, so no one can quote me like a scientist, but from what we see culturally, just around the world, there's different cultures that people grow up with. Like in Europe, emotions for men are more acceptable, and actually more masculine traits are more acceptable for women as well. It's kind of like androgynous in Europe, right? So everybody kind of functions as a unit very efficiently. In the United States, where there's a lot of gender-defined roles in certain states, and then, like you said, there's kind of these undefined roles in other states, and a lot of LGBT movements, and a lot of questioning on what gender actually means or what it is. There's just varying degrees of acceptance and varying degrees of an attitude towards it. And I think that with those two totally polarizing topics, it makes both of them harder on for their point of views instead of kind of meeting in the middle.
Yeah, that's humankind in general, I find right now. It's like everyone's becoming more and more polarized. And so I live in Saskatchewan, Canada. I don't know if you've any idea where that is. And I'm rural. So that is a big thing, actually, urban and rural. So like when I was in high school, it was like my urban friends, because I live about an hour outside of a city. I'd go there and I felt like I could be 100% myself. But when I was at home in my small town, it was harder because of those stigmas. And
yeah, small towns are like way more judgmental, I think, because they're so small. They have to keep their tight-knit beliefs because everybody knows everybody. And in order to fit in that community, you have to like go with the grain. I grew up in a really small town of like 2,000 people, and I definitely didn't fit in. And then I moved to Los Angeles. So grew up in the Midwest in Wisconsin in a small town. And then you go to Los Angeles when you turn 18. And that was a total, not necessarily culture shock for me, but my political views totally flipped. I didn't really have political views at 18, but like the way I saw the world completely changed because they were just so much more open and accepting of different races and cultures. And I went from, like an all white kind of dynamic where I thought I wasn't racist to going into a completely Hispanic dynamic where I was the only white person and realizing, holy crap, some of the stuff I grew up with was really racist, even though I didn't think I was racist at all. Right. So
yeah.
it's crazy the way that culture and just where you're at. That's why I always encourage everybody to get out of where they're at, because you see the world with such different eyes.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, it sounds like we have very similar background because like Saskatchewan is kind of like the Wisconsin of the United States, and and the size of my town is 2,000 people approximately. So,
oh wow!
So yeah,
and you're still there. God bless your soul.
Well, I came back. I left for a while. Like I said, I used to travel and play in bands and stuff, and then I went to raise my family. I settled down, and this town was the cheapest place to buy a house at the time.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and my family was here. My parents are here and stuff. So, but now as an adult, because I've been here for quite a while since I've been back, I do find it hard to relate with a lot of the men in this town. I don't know. I think maybe generally I relate better with women, and I don't know if that was because how I was raised or my relationship with my dad, or I don't know. I'm no psychotherapist, but I just in general find I relate better with women.
Well, why do you think that is? What about being around women makes you more comfortable than being around men?
I think I was judged a lot in high school. Like I was a skinny kid. I didn't play hockey, which every freaking dude plays hockey. I didn't grow up at a farm in a rural area, and everybody, I didn't know how to drive a tractor or skate. I preferred music and arts and stuff like that. And so I think a lot of the males I grew up with and around, were I don't want to say I was bullied, but I just couldn't relate. And so when I do relate with another male, it's like, it's a really great feeling. And I related more with more men when I was in urban places and stuff. And now that I moved back to my small town, and I've been here for quite a while, it's like my friend group is very small and it's few and far between when it comes to having relationships with men. But also I'm okay with that, I think.
Well, now that you're older, right, and you've had all these life experiences, do you think that it's still that you can't relate, or that maybe there's a type of block from your past experiences that prevents you from trying to create deeper relationships with these people?
It's probably a little both. You don't know my background, but I've been in and out of the psych ward. I've had suicide attempts. I've just recently diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm missing something. Oh, and I'm 6 years sober. So I had addiction issues. So it's weird when we micro focus on things. Like when I was in the psych ward and in treatment, I got along with people that I wouldn't even try to associate with, because we bonded on healing these things. But in general, actually, I forget your question. I'm sorry. See, there we go. I told you this would happen.
So what I asked was, do you think that there's a block from your past that prevents you from trying to make that connection now?
I think partly there's a block because it feels like I'm protecting myself because I felt invalidated or inadequate or something from these other males growing up. But also it's just like, since becoming sober and stuff too, I just don't feel like I need, it's more quality than it is quantity friendships. So it's like, I have these certain men in my life, and, I have lots of women and stuff. And I just don't want to make more friends. But what I do, but it's weird. It's like, I don't know. It's weird.
Well, what if I said that your own resistance to wanting to make new, and I'm not saying that you have to, right? Because you could totally be fine with what you have. Mm-hmm. But if there really is a block and you're kind of like you're subtly rejecting men because you felt rejected. What if I said that you are continuing to perpetuate your own self-rejection cycle because you're not allowing that wound to heal over? You're just like putting a padding around the injury, right? Because you're avoiding making the connection or trying to bridge the gap by assuming that there's no connection or no relationship, because everything you just described, being sober for 6 years, suicidal ideation, going to a psych ward, a lot of men struggle with those things. So you might have a lot more in common with a lot of men than you think, right? Which is, awful to say that is the commonality that might be there. But it really is so true. Like so many men struggle with alcohol and suicidal ideation, and kind of being open to saying, now that I'm an adult, maybe I can overcome this maybe fear or this wound that I had when I was young of feeling left out. Maybe I don't have to be that way anymore. Just interesting way to think about things.
Well, you're my God for an hour, and I'm going to listen to everything you say and assume you're right. But I think you're wrong on this one. No, I'm kidding. I think so. So here's the thing. In my healing, I have realized that because I used to be very judgmental, be like, "Oh, fuck those guys, bunch of jocks and truck driving." Blah, blah, blah. But in the last 15 years or so, it's like because I did meet people like that in treatment and in the psych ward and stuff. It's like I'm less judgy. I'm also just I just don't relate. I can't talk about trucks and I can't talk about hockey. I don't know what the hell they're talking about in 3/4 of the time, right? I don't know. It's so complicated because some of it is also political. It's like ideologies and when you get to talking to some of these guys, it's like we just have different. Okay, I don't want to sound judgy, but we just have different morals, right? Which is fine. People can have different morals. I'm not judging them on their morals. It's just I just don't relate as well. I don't know. I feel like I'm defending myself.
As we do when we're in a response, right? It's okay.
Well, I'm wondering if maybe you're right. That maybe I am putting up padding.
I'm not here to be right or wrong. I'm just saying things.
Well, bless you for saying things. Is this a common theme for you, or I guess you get no? Oh, you don't get dudes that are like.
Well, I mean, with my clients, this is kind of a process that I go through, but I've never done this on a podcast. Are you talking about the question type of thing?
Yeah. Like you're meeting guys like me that are like, they find it hard to relate with other men.
Oh, well, yeah, that's very common. Yes. Like immediately when you said that, I mean, it's so many men. It's actually a sign of the father wound. Which is
my dad.
And then you said, I think it's because of my dad. And I said, okay, anybody who's watched my content is going to go, nailed it. That's exactly what they're going to say.
Great. Now I can't release this.
Because you tend to feel safer around women because the masculine it wasn't there, or it just made you feel so unsafe in a way. Like you said, you didn't feel like you could be yourself. You didn't feel like you could surrender. You're kind of always in a fight or flight. So you go towards the feminine energy, which is usually more nurturing, accepting, understanding. And especially when you're a man who's more into the arts or the creatives, it's not like the stereotypical masculine thing to be into, right? So it's not even necessarily that you feel just rejected by the father, but the masculine in general. You suddenly feel like I'm not the man that society or the world wants me to be. And so you kind of reject the masculine in general and just go towards the women because that's where you feel accepted.
Right, yeah. And I mean, I don't want to. Both my parents did the best they could with what they had, with their traumas and their whatever. But I was a mama's boy growing up. So, and it was also exactly what you said. It wasn't just the father. It was masculinity in general. Kind of, I felt lost in it a little bit, I guess. So I rejected it. No, I felt rejected by masculinity, perhaps. Oh man. Therapy's hard.
So you subconsciously reject what rejects you because we don't like the feeling of being rejected.
And so I'm perpetuating my own rejection. Oh, Elise.
Which you can let me know if I'm right or wrong here. If you continue to perpetuate the rejection of the masculine, you might also be perpetuating the rejection of the masculine behaviors within yourself, which means you tend to be afraid to go into the stereotypical masculine emotional things like aggression, competitiveness, strength. Like, so men will be afraid to raise their voice or be afraid to get angry or be afraid to, get argumentative. They usually choose to avoid conflict and they'll go more towards the softness. They'll try to listen more. They'll try to understand feelings, which isn't necessarily negative, but it's like the avoidance of that because there's like a fear there of like, I don't want to be what those guys were. I don't want to be a jerk or a dickhead or whatever you have associated with it. So you fear kind of this other side of yourself that could be more into leadership, more, just like stronger or competitive. I could be totally. Do you resonate with any of that?
A little bit, yeah. because I honestly I was like that when I was drinking. I mean, ask my wife. I was, the guy that like punched the wall and like would freak out and be.
Yeah, and that had to come out when you were drinking because in your normal life, you were suppressing all of that. What comes out when we're drinking is what we suppress.
Well, and not even while I was drinking, was just even in my normal life during my drinking years. And since I've been sober and I've been healing and stuff, it's like I'm a lot less like that. And I don't know if that's because I'm rejecting feeling that way, because it is a gross feeling. I'm not gonna lie. Like when I would like fly off the handle because the screwdriver wouldn't fit in the screw or whatever, and I'd throw it across the room and I'd punch the wall. Like, it's gross. It's like I feel like I'm so like I'd get embarrassed. I'm like, why the fuck did I do that? And then I beat myself up and internalize and yada yada. So I mean, my life is easier to live now because I don't do that. But I don't know if you're 100% right about. I tried to avoid the being quote unquote the masculine stuff because I grew a beard and I have tattoos. To look at me, I look masculine, but I do avoid conflict 100%. I do avoid conflict. I mean, like the freaking plague. So you're right about that part. So I don't know what that means. I didn't mean for this to turn into a private session, but I guess it's not surprising.
Yeah, but it's so many people listening are going to be able to relate. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's weird. I'm a mental health advocate and yada yada, but it's weird how you can actually like compartmentalize. Like there's LGBTQ mental health issues, there's female issues, there's men issues, there's children's issues. There's like. So it's interesting that when, as an advocate, it's like, okay, you can actually be very specific of what kind of mental health issues you're going to advocate for.
But like anybody who identifies as a male can't fit in my niche, because if you grew up as a woman, majority of the time, you went through women's issues majority of the time. And like when I'm so male specific, it is different. And someone who is identifying as a male or identifying as a woman need someone who specializes in people who identify as men or identify as women, because that's a totally different set of traumas and life experiences and perspectives that I have not studied. And I have not been, and I haven't even been a male, but I've just studied men so much that I can really understand where they're coming from and where they're at. But like you get to a certain point where like you have to take time to research where people have been, at least before you can really kind of understand to help them.
Right. Which I guess that's why there's counselors or therapists that what am I trying to say? Specialize in trans issues or LGBTQ issues. What did you study? Like, are you like, you're not just like someone who likes men and so I'm going to help them out? Like you actually have some education and stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't have any formal education. I didn't go to college. I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. But I have upwards of like 17 certifications or something like that. And I got all of them to help myself. I actually didn't get them to help other people. I was literally like, I went through therapy, and I loved it. But after like a year and a half, I noticed I was still going through these patterns, and it just wasn't solving anything. And I didn't have any action items, and I didn't understand how to like break these cycles. So I dove into neuroscience and REBT and cognitive behavioral therapy and neurolinguistics programming. And once I started to learn how the brain worked, and I learned about trauma and how it affected the body, and I learned that there were actually actionable things you could do to heal yourself from trauma, and you didn't have to talk about it over and over and over again, that you could actually just reprogram certain neural pathways in the brain. And I did it to myself. That's when I said, holy crap, I have to share this information with everybody. That's when I started posting videos on LinkedIn. And that's when men reached out to me. And it kind of snowballed from there, where I applied that knowledge to men's specific issues, to where now, fast forward over 3 years later, I have a very specific formula that I guide men through, and I can pinpoint exactly where they're at. And I understand their needs, and I understand what's going on, to a point where I can give them the smallest action item to help them have the biggest impact to change their life, so they don't have to waste time suffering. It's like the worst thing you can do is spend your time suffering because you think you have to talk about it over and over and over again to figure it out. Like, I just wanted someone to give me the answer, the step-by-step process, like why would I suffer if I didn't have to?
Mm-hmm. Well, that surprised me. I thought you had some formal education, and I don't care if you do or
Sorry.
not. No, that's fine. I don't care if you
So
do
many
or don't.
people I know, I feel bad because I don't, and I know a lot of people will like feel to discredit me then, but
Yeah, has that happened? They're like, you don't know what you're talking about because you didn't go to
yeah,
school.
I mean, so many people say that in the comment section, but
Uh,
what matters to me is the people who are helped, right? Like I know what I know, and I don't claim to be a therapist.
right.
And my clients who have gone through my programs, their lives change. So that's all of the evidence I need. And also I asked my therapist once if I was like, yeah, maybe I should go to school to like get a doctorate like you. And she literally told me, Elise, if you're already making money and you're already helping people, she's like, don't do that. She's like, you got to go through 10 years. You got to go through all this stuff. She literally said, and like therapists will tell you that don't do that because then you're restricted and you have to follow these guidelines and you can't help people the way that you want. And that's why the holistic psychologist, Nicole LePera, she's got over 5.2 million followers, has written 2 best-selling books on helping people. She said, I left psychology because the rules and restrictions didn't allow me to help people in the way that I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that you shouldn't get education, but I think that there's a lot of rules around how we can help people. And with how I wanted to help people, that wasn't a pathway that serviced me best.
I respect that. It's like going to university to learn how to be a musician. It's like, no, you just pick up the instrument and whatever, you otherwise there's hard, fast rules, like you said, and you must paint with this paintbrush, this stroke, and it's like just whatever works, and you find that it's working well and you're getting received well, then what the hell? That said, I used to get pushback too because I used to work in addictions. I worked at the place I was a client at one point. For whatever reason, clients gravitated towards me, and and I wasn't a counselor. I was just a support staff, but counselors would get pissed off because
you were real and genuine and you didn't have anything to sell people, like I think that's why people ask me all the time, like, why do people gravitate towards your stuff? Like, I don't know, maybe you could tell me, like, why did you gravitate towards my stuff, or why did you ask me to be on the podcast?
Because I'm lonely. No. Okay. I told you I'm a smart ass. So that's another thing. Humor is a self-defense mechanism. Why did I ask you? Well,
I'm just only asking you because that's like what'll show you why people gravitated towards you, right?
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think partly because, you are real. It's not, you had the confidence. You had lots of followers, so it seemed like she obviously knows what she's talking about because, people could see through fake shit pretty easily for the most part. And I wanted a female. I like talking about men's health once in a while. I wanted to cover that subject, but I wanted it from a female's perspective too. So you were one of the top ones on Instagram that I could find. So, and you seemed likable for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't know why I like you. I don't know why people like me. We're charming, I guess. I don't know.
It's the thing. I'll take it.
Have you ever been accused, or have you ever thought that you're trying to make men more sensitive? Like you're trying to take away that masculinity? You know what I mean? Have you been accused of that?
I have been accused of that, ironically, by another men's coach.
Female?
No, he was a man. He was some dude, and he was constantly making videos like stitching me. He's like, the thing about this woman is she's trying to make men more sensitive. And I got really fed up one day because my content doesn't even say anything about making men more sensitive. I say things like set boundaries, stand your ground, get to understand your own values and your mission. And in a way, you should become more sensitive so you can be more strong. Because if you're constantly trying to reject your sensitivity, you are operating out of the fear of addressing it, and you become weak. Like, because if you don't understand half of yourself, that other half is weak, right? You can't just make like one arm super strong and not work the other arm out. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? Like, you're so imbalanced and it's weird, and people look at you weird because they can sense it, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I've definitely been accused of that by other men's coaches, probably people in the comments too, but I get a lot of comments, so I don't necessarily focus on the negative ones. But my content's not about that. I seek to strengthen men in all facets of their lives.
Right. And to me, it sounds like that other coach could maybe use some coaching.
I don't know, man. It was funny. It was funny. I don't know why you would see, because in my mind, we're all headed towards the same mission. And I don't spend my time. I would never think to tear down another men's coach. Like, it just doesn't cross my mind unless I thought they were being very detrimental to men, to just say something about it. But like, it seemed like he was seeking to tear people down, and that was the foundation of his content.
Right. And I've seen that before myself too, where it's like,
I don't vibe with that.
So some of them, it's almost like it's almost like it's anger based or something, is sort of like resentment based, and it's like,
and they attract the people who are very resentful and angry, but it's not helping anyone because you're just perpetuating the anger and resentment. And so it's like, I didn't spend a lot of time on it. I kind of made a response video and just moved on. But that, I don't know, it just confused me, because I'm like, we're doing the same thing. So why are you trying to shit on me, man? I'm helping people. So like, why are you trying to bring this negativity in my life? We should be boosting each other up.
100%. I
I'm
think
trying to help men out.
Today's episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health is brought to you by Co-op. I've been a member of my local co-op, Sherwood Co-op, for about 25 years, I think. My co-op is one of more than 150 local independent cooperative associations in more than 600 communities across Western Canada. Co-op is a different kind of business. It's not just a gas bar or a grocery store, although co-op is those things too. At its core, co-op is a group of people working together to help their neighbors and build their community. Co-op members are owners, and success is shared with everyone. Your co-op doesn't benefit one person or one corporation. Your co-op was built for everyone. Your co-op was built for your community. Learn more about co-op and find a location near you at coop.crs. I think some men, and probably women, again, this is just general blanket statements, they confuse making men more sensitive with making men emotionally mature and how to regulate our emotions properly. And they think that's being a pussy, or, you're making them sensitive. Is like, it's actually, it's made my life, I'll say how it affected me. It's made my life so much easier to live. And it's made my relationships with everyone around me better.
Yeah, well, because like you were saying before, when you would get so angry, it's a sign of emotional dysregulation. Like you couldn't, the fact that you said, I was so ashamed of myself, why did I do that, tells me that your nervous system was so overwhelmed that you couldn't control getting that angry. Like there was something inside of you that, was overwhelmed, was too stimulated, and you were overreacting to it, right? And once you learned how to control that, life is easier, life is better. That's exactly what this stuff is all about. I'm really glad that you found that healing, because you also then teach other people that by demonstration. Like you've become a leader for men and a leader for your children and your spouse when you're able to control that.
Yeah, I'm a leader.
You are. Everyone's a leader in their lives because someone is always watching you.
That's true. But we're also all followers then too, in a way.
Absolutely.
Okay. It's
the
a
master
balance.
Should always be the student, right?
That's right. It's the
circle.
Balance.
If you don't think that you're a leader, you're not going to be a good follower either.
It's not that hard, is it? Well, I don't know why people can't 100% get it. I mean, I do. I do get why, but it's just not as complicated as some people think it is. It's the practicing, not the understanding of it, that's hard. What do you think of the term toxic masculinity, and what does that mean to you? I guess. How do you interpret that statement?
I've spoken about this a few times actually in the beginning of my coaching. When I think toxic masculinity, I think about the unrealistic expectations set upon men by society, that they shouldn't express their emotions and they should just be tough through everything, and they should, do everything by themselves. I think that that's like a toxic masculinity expectation. A lot of people think toxic masculinity is just saying that being masculine is toxic, which is just not true, right? Just being masculine is very healthy. Being feminine is very healthy. And all of us have masculine and feminine energy. in us. And, there's like toxic feminine, you could say there's toxic femininity too, where women have to all be housewives or they have to all like do their nails and their hair and whatever. It's like, it's the expectations that are placed upon us that we didn't ask for, right? That are unhealthy, that are like detrimental to our health.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with being masculine, but have you found that women can also perpetuate the stigma of men and like, I'm always so careful not to offend people with my questions. Not offend you, but offend listeners. That sometimes
just say what you mean.
Okay, so sometimes
you shouldn't be afraid to offend people. I know that you're afraid of conflict, but just don't be afraid, because if you don't stand for someone, you stand for no one, Todd.
Damn you. Never mind. I'm gonna stitch a video. No, I don't. Never mind.
You're gonna stitch an angry video.
This lady is bad. I don't even know what I would say, but anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I've seen this with my own eyes. Women that'll be like, "Oh, my husband's such a whatever. He's so angry and all this," and then when they do something sensitive, they're like, "Man up, don't be such a pussy." And it's like, well, what the hell do you want from me? Like, it can be very confusing. Do you hear that often from men, or do you see it yourself?
Yeah. And I have so many different facets to this that I've talked about also. But yeah, women, there's a lot of unhealed men out there, and there's a lot of unhealed women out there. And immature men will often partner with immature women. So the second that one of them decides to mature or grow conscious or self-heal, they're changing the dynamic of that container. What they don't realize is that just because you've healed doesn't mean your partner's healed, or doesn't mean your partner now adopts the beliefs that you have. So if you've been an immature man who's trying to heal and has gotten with an immature woman because of your traumas or your attractions or your attachment styles, you now try to be expressive and sensitive with her, but she's still caught up in the belief system of men should be a certain way, right? So that's not all women, but that's a lot of unhealed men's experiences because they've partnered with like meets like, right? So there are a lot of women out there who are used to the notion that men shouldn't cry, because that's what they've heard too. Men don't cry. Men are supposed to be strong. Men take all this on, right? And then they are like disgusted when their man cries or something, and they're like, and then they're caught up in the feminist movement of, he puts everything on me. He wants me to be a mom and a wife and a mother to him, and also his therapist and his maid. And so they kind of take it on as like another burden instead of being a partner. And because men don't usually express things, chances are they've gone to her before a therapist, so they don't know how to healthily work through it. So they've just dumped on her, right? So it's this whole mix of things where it's like, we need to do a little self-work first, understand what's appropriate. We need to understand where our partner is at so that we can, things need to be done little by little. And we just expect dynamic changes from ourselves, from our partners, from everybody immediately. And if it doesn't happen, then we go back into our shell. We say, that doesn't work. This person's toxic. Fuck everybody. I'm never doing that again. I can't be vulnerable around women. Women don't like that. Instead of just understanding that it could be the circumstances, the way it was done, that you might have to try multiple times, that you might have to have a conversation in order for things to start going in the momentum and direction that you want.
I like you. I like you even more now because of that answer. I 100% agree that it's like that. And, yeah, it's not anyone's fault. It's not
anyone's fault. That's the thing. It's like in relationships or in your own life. And I'm sure you've experienced this as a man, because every man I talk to experiences this. You start the healing journey and you do a few things, and then you get upset with yourself because something isn't healed like immediately, or you haven't arrived at the destination. Like you think, okay, I did this. Why am I not better? Why did I not fix this? Didn't I work on this 3 months ago? Didn't I do this before? And you get mad that you like have to repeat something a few times, or that you have to continue evolving. And it's like, healing is an eternal journey because it's just the continuous self-improvement cycle, right? And you've taken your whole life to learn a certain set of beliefs and systems, and you can't just unlearn it in one day. So the fact that we expect this from ourselves and from our partners and from the rest of the world, or else we're just going to close up and never be vulnerable again, is just so unrealistic, and it'll make you so unhappy. So you need to take things one step at a time. There's going to have to be multiple conversations that you need to have. There's going to be multiple scenarios that you need to have in order to say for sure, is there improvement here? Is this working here?
And sometimes it happened to me. Sometimes, in order to heal, I mean, we're all products of our environment, so you kind of have to change your environment. And I don't mean geographically. I mean maybe different friends. Maybe have you ever recommended a guy like maybe you have to break up with this girl because she's not healing. She's not, you've leveled up internally, and she's making matters worse for you. And again, it's no one's fault. It's just, we're a product of our environment. And if something in our environment keeps dragging us down and not allowing us to heal, then you have to change your environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I never give anybody advice to like break up with someone or not.
Yeah.
I always try to work towards the way of the client's goals. And my goal is to make them the healthiest person possible. So if something is not working in their relationship, I help them understand what they can do better to communicate, to strategize. I tell them to try couples therapy because you always want to try to salvage something before you just throw it away. That's what I believe. You want to give the person a chance to see if they can rise up. But I never tell them which way to go. But eventually, some of my clients have gotten to a point where they do try all these things. They've now gained a lot of self-confidence and they understand their own needs better. And unfortunately, that's led to a few, like breakups and divorces more often than not, because usually when men come to me, they're the only ones working on the relationship. And that's really unfortunate. I think in a lot of therapist's office or coach's offices where there's a couple dynamic and they're struggling, it's usually only one partner working on it. And relationships usually only survive if both partners are willing to do the work.
I am lucky that I married a very smart lady. And when I was going through my darkest times and I was in and out of the hospital and I was doing things, I don't want to get too personal, but I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a good father. I wasn't a good employee. I wasn't a good, quote unquote good. I was doing stuff that was giving me instant gratification. I was drinking lots, using lots. But she realized that it wasn't, if I'm going to start healing, if I'm going to start, she has work she needs to do too. And whether
she did some work too,
whether whatever pain I caused onto her triggered her to realize that or what it was, but we both saw separate clients, or not clients. We were separate therapists and counselors, and then we went together to a couples therapy. And it was so weird. We were together for probably 6 or 7 years already at that point, but we actually grew up together. Like, it was weird. We already had kids and everything. We were married, kids and houses, but that healing journey, it's almost like we watched each other grow up, and we helped each other grow up too, even though we were already adults, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You guys took each other through the childhood wounds that you had, and you supported each other through that. And that's actually very rare to find someone who is, because when you're saying, that you were the one kind of with the addiction and the sober problem and, in and out of the hospital, a lot of spouses will give up at that point because they'll say, this is too much for me. And I'm not sure what
it came close to that.
I'm sure. But I'm sure what you did was you actually sought out help, and you were actually making improvements or actually trying to change, because a lot of people who are in that situation necessarily don't do it until the very last minute. And the other partner is tired, right? But your partner also said, okay, shit, he's doing this. I'm going to do it too. And be on kind of like the same team. Like, we're going to grow through this together. And, that's really lucky. That's really lucky that you found that bond. I'm happy for you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know if it was so much she said she saw me being proactive. She's like, oh, I want to do this together with him. I think what I was doing was sparking childhood traumas within her too. And it was like, okay, I got to deal with, And most people will give up because instead of saying, hey, I can solve this trigger that I'm having, they just say, oh, I want to get rid of the trigger, which is him. Right. Yeah. Yeah. For whatever reason,
Yeah, we don't know her reasoning, but
yeah.
We're just speculating in the universe of like potentialities.
Yeah. Yeah. And it took a long time because, my proactiveness, it ebbed and flowed, let's say. and it didn't really. So there was about a 6 year gap between me going to the hospital and me getting sober. 6 years, maybe like 4 years. So those 4 years it wasn't perfect, right? It wasn't like, oh, he's starting to heal, so I'm gonna try healing, and like that healing journey took a while.
It's loving to be understood and validated, but you can now control, and like it doesn't impact you the way it did, because you probably feel also more understood by your wife because you both went through that healing process.
Yes, which again, all of that again just makes everyday life living so much easier. And it's just like I've just been, I never toot my own horn. I'm very rarely proud of myself for anything, but it's like I'm proud of myself that I'm able to like, see that and recognize it. And yeah, like, holy shit, maybe I am a better person than I once was. Or maybe not a better person, but like,
Sure, you are.
I'm more like how I want to be than how I used to be. Do you have much contact with other female men's coaches, or?
I have. Me and Sarah Dawn Moore used to talk a lot in the beginning when she first started doing her content.
Okay. The only reason I ask is like, have you found that some clients are like, they become emotionally attached to you in a way, and then it turns into like, I'm treating him the way he wants to be treated by whatever relationship he's in or whatever, and it's like,
maybe in the very, very, very beginning of my coaching, when I didn't understand, because I was also trying to kind of be clients' friends. I would talk to my therapist at the same time, because I still kept the same therapist, even though I did all that inner work and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she taught me about, like, you just have to have separate boundaries. Like, you can't really, she said, as much as you can be friendly with your clients, you can't be friends with your clients. And so after I set hard boundaries, and I think people could sense that from me, it never happened again.
That's good. Yeah. Because I could see how that could happen.
Yeah, I think my rates are just too high right now, and my energy is just too, like, people can't just book a session with me for free and have a chat. Like, they got to pony up. So people who really want healing are serious about it. I get people in the DMs who are creepy. They think that we're friends. But no.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, even in AA, it's like if you have a sponsor, they say to have a same-sex sponsor, or if you're gay, then you have a different sponsor or whatever. It's to avoid these situations, but it's very different, right? It's very more.
But it's like similar, right? Because as a mentor to someone who is struggling, you become their safe space, and someone who is struggling doesn't have all the mechanics yet to understand their healing process and understand what's going on. So they do become attached. Like, you become their foundation for attachment. And so if that mentor or therapist or coach doesn't understand healthy boundaries, then they will create kind of like an unsafe dynamic for that person, because they blur the lines, right? And then that it doesn't actually allow that person to heal, because they've just replaced an attachment wound that person has, right? And especially when you're detoxing from alcohol or drugs or whatever, like, that person's detoxing from the wound of alcohol. Like, that was their support system for so long. And so if you're not a strong support system that has strong boundaries that can show them, this is what a healthy relationship looks like, you can't be dependent on me like you could with alcohol or drugs or whatever, then you do them a disservice.
Would you say that's also a symptom of emotional irregulation, is like falling in love with your emotional support person?
Yeah, I mean, it's emotional dysregulation, but it's also just like attachment wounding. Like, like, everything that we develop is from childhood. So whatever wounds that you have there, they're going to show up in adulthood in our relationships. So it's not necessarily that, like, 35-year-old Todd falls in love with his mentor because he's 35-year-old Todd falling in love with his mentor. It could be 6-year-old Todd that's within 35-year-old Todd senses a deep connection that fulfills a wound he had from his father or from his mother that he didn't get. And so now he's extremely attached, and his adult brain is saying, oh, this is love. because you don't know how to identify it as like the 6-year-old self. Like you're not thinking of like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once you actually identify like, oh, that is how I saw it. And that was the mother wound. Like this is what happened in the very beginning when I had a client who had developed feelings or whatever. And I explained to him this dynamic about how it was this transference of the mother wound. Immediately he got it. And the feelings went away.
Mm-hmm.
It like immediately helped, because then the understanding comes into play. You're like, oh, that's what it is. And you create a foundation for actually, healthy relationships for them later on.
Right. It was just now that when I asked that question, if it's also a type of emotional dysregulation, the first time I ever thought of that, because, I mean, anytime you think of emotional dysregulation, you think of anger, you think of anxiety and fear and stuff, but you never think of
love.
Yeah. It's weird, but I don't know if I'm right or not, but it doesn't matter. Because I mean, yeah, I guess it would be somewhat a dysregulation, and even the anger is not just dysregulation; it's dysregulation because of a father wound. So maybe the love part is because of a mother wound or whatever. Anyway, I blew my own mind just then.
What we're here for. This is actually like one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done.
Really?
Yeah, because we've talked about different things. And I would love a copy of this actually, if I could, to like cut up into sound bites.
For sure, yeah. I know it took me about 20 minutes to warm up to not be so weird and awkward, but
no, we're there. We're here. We're here for it all.
Yeah. I just saw something you put about you're starting a show. Promote that. Promote anything you want to promote.
Yeah. Well, I had 2 gentlemen reach out to me to help create a show for men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Because this man, he actually is from Canada. He won an award for Innovator of the Year and then went downstairs to tell his family he wanted to kill himself. And this is a story like so many other men who have done life the way that they thought that they should, and they're just unhappy and unfulfilled. So we're going to collaborate together and create something that will help impact men's lives so that they can be better fathers, leaders, spouses, and men, and just feel more understood so that we can eliminate the percentage of men who have suicidal ideation and can just live happier, healthier, better lives. So that's there.
Like a television show?
It will be like online television, like Apple TV, Roku, things like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but that has not even been created yet. It's just like we just had talks. But hopefully maybe by the time this comes out, something will be out. But yeah, keep watch. And any man who just wants to heal in general, I have a 99-cent masterclass that they can take. That's the foundation. It's about self-regulation. So you can attest to the power of learning how to self-regulate. Will change your whole life. That is literally the foundation where you start. And that's what I'm putting on for men so that they can really understand how to self-regulate, heal themselves, and, start being better.
Sorry, one more question. Has there ever been a client that you were like, I don't think I can help this person, I should recommend them to someone else?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's been a few people who have suicidal ideation that I had to recommend, and I actually am, what do they call it? Like, I'm like suicide trained, but I'm not a therapist, so I can't medically diagnose. So like when you're in that position, it just requires a different team. And I'm more for after, like you've kind of done self-work and you just want action items. You kind of want the next steps. You want to build on your life. We have to know where we fit in people's lives.
Thank you, Elise. You're doing awesome work for men and for women and for, well, just humanity, really. That's the easiest way to say it. So, yeah, keep up the good work. Again, if you want to follow Elise Michaels, you can check out the show notes and there'll be her social media stuff on there. And give her a follow. She's got courses, and I think she calls them courses. She has services that she provides that you can check out. Speaking of checking people out, why don't you check out my friend Robin Joy _virtual assistant on Instagram. She has been helping me and the podcast out immensely. I believe I used that word right. And her services are fantastic. She's a virtual assistant. She helps you with original brand manufacturing. She launches strategies and all types of other stuff that you maybe aren't good at doing, or you just don't have time and energy to do it because you're too busy creating. So check out RobinJoy_virtual assistant and tell her Todd sent you. And that's me. I'm Todd. Okay, that's it. That's the episode. Please, until next time, don't forget to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.